right, so big week 2 game for both these teams. The Cardinals are traveling into Las Vegas. Both teams are 0-1. Chiefs got the better of the Cardinals. 5-touchdown performance by Patrick Mahomes out the gate. Great performance there. And the Raiders found themselves in one of those AFC West clashes going against the Chargers. Currently, the betting line is 5.5 points in favor of the Raiders at home. Blake, what is your early interpretation of this game?
The Arizona Cardinals really looked rough this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, Cardinals just went from being one of the top dogs at the beginning of last season to being a laughing stock for a Chiefs team that people thought was going downhill. So I think it's almost panic time in Arizona. If you're asking me, I do think it's a big game here for them to be able to prove to their fans that they are capable of making the playoffs again. Because if they lose this game, playoffs are looking pretty far out of reach already, and it's week 2. So I don't think I think it's a very big game for Arizona, at least. And also for Las Vegas in a certain way as well. I mean, you started off 0-1, which is, kind of expected going against the LA Chargers. But at the same time, I mean, look at the rest of your division. The Chargers looked really good. The Chiefs looked really good. The Broncos, not so much, but they'll bounce back eventually, right? They have Russell Wilson. So I definitely think that this is a big game for the Raiders as well, to prove that you're also able to make it the playoffs with a very good division around you. So I think it's a huge game for both teams. Derek Carr had a pretty up and down game last week. A couple of interceptions to prove to be really key, but it does look like he's already found a bit of a groove with Davante Adams, a wide receiver. So I do think they are going to be able to have a pretty solid offense this week against the Arizona secondary, which is not the best. I think the really big key of the game that I'm watching is who can Kyler Murray get the ball to, and who can have a big game at the wide receiver core for the Arizona Cardinals. I think this is a big game that Marquise Brown needs to have. I think, you're going to look at guys like AJ Green. Hopefully, if Rondale Moore is healthy this season, this game, he could come in. They need to find a good receiver, a good target to be able to have Kyler Murray be able to use, because they were not putting up any points against the Chiefs last week, and that's a concern.
Kyle, obviously you produce the Cardinals podcast. What's the word out of Arizona?
Well, first of all, let me ask both of you a question. Do you know who was the Arizona Cardinals leading wide receiver or just leading receiver in week 1?
Dortch.
Yep, you got it. Greg Dortch, which I'm sure many people listening to this podcast don't know who Greg Dortch is. And that is the state of the Arizona Cardinals receiving room at this point. It's rough out here in Arizona at this point. The problem for Arizona is that they have the worst corner room in the NFL, but on the flip side, they have the best safety room in the NFL, which is a weird dynamic that you don't see that very often, where they have very clearly 2 of the 15 best safeties in the NFL, plus Isaiah Simmons is used in the safety spot every now and again. And their corners are just terrible. And that's going to be a problem because they don't really have a game plan for guarding 3 different receivers who create space like the Raiders have. Obviously, Davante Adams, they'll probably bring Jalen Thompson down and double him, or maybe a linebacker follows him in the secondary. You have obviously Darren Waller and you have Renfro. That's going to be difficult. I know the Raiders lost week 1 and it didn't look pretty. I think that that's more of a one-off than anything else, just because Blake was very nice to Derek Carr. Derek Carr played pretty bad in that game, and only that late touchdown saved his statistics from looking kind of decent. And we've seen Derek Carr play football for 10 years. We expect that Derek Carr is not going to all of a sudden fall off a cliff and not be a starting caliber quarterback. He'll bounce back at some point. He'll play better. It's just a bad game for Derek Carr in week 1. And, if you were to ask what the problem for the Raiders is going into this year, most people wouldn't say Derek Carr is the problem for the Raiders in terms of scoring and defense and everything about them. So the Raiders should be fine in that respect. And I think that the Cardinals should be feeling a bit nervous. I was a bit surprised that the line is 5.5 for this game, just because I feel like both of these teams are a little closer than that. But I think the Cardinals' point is they're going to have problems guarding Davante Adams and Waller and Renfro. And for the Raiders, do they take advantage of that? That's going to be the biggest matchup in determining the outcome of the game. Because if the Cardinals force turnovers like the Chargers did, there's no reason that even with their depleted offense, they can't put up enough points to beat the Raiders.
Blake, quick answer. Who needs it more?
Cardinals, I think without question, Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals need this game to be able to prove that they are capable of continuing on. I mean, we've already seen all the question marks behind Cliff Kingsbury. We've seen the question marks behind Kyler Murray as a quarterback. We've seen the question marks on, is this team capable of being a playoff team at all? And I think, though, the Raiders definitely do need a win right now. That would definitely be big for their franchise. I definitely think they have the talent to bounce back later on this season. I don't know if the Cardinals do, even with DeAndre Hopkins coming back later on from suspension. This is still a team that's going to have a really, really tough schedule against a really, really good division with teams like the Rams and the 49ers both in it. I think are both better teams right now than the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals need to win this game if they want to have a chance making the playoffs this year.
Kyle, do you concur?
I would concur, although I don't think either team should be hitting the panic button. There will be chances to catch up for the wild card later in the season. And, I don't think either of these teams are realistically thinking they're going to win their divisions. So I think that even if, one of them's probably going to lose unless there's a weird tie. But I think even if a team loses, Cardinals, it's more important because the Cardinals going into the year had the hardest schedule relative to 2021 records in the league. So there's less chances for them, but both teams will have a chance to catch up later on.
I will actually go contrarian with you guys just because I'm looking at the schedule coming up for both these teams. Well, the Cardinals do have a tough week 3 matchup against the Rams. They get a little bit of relief with the Panthers and Eagles who are still trying to figure things out. So a little bit of a softer landing. The Raiders, they have to go on the road to Tennessee next week. They have to play the Broncos in week 4. They got to play the Chiefs after that. Those are 3 tough opponents coming up. And if they go 1-2 in that stretch and they lose this game, you're talking about a 1-4 stretch, that's not a great way to start off the season. The Cardinals, obviously you don't want to risk going 0-3. Like let's say they go into the Rams game 0-2 and lose that one, but you could steal victories from the Panthers and Eagles. Still not ideal, but still is a possibility for them if they can live up to last year. Now, I will say, going back to just a week ago when we previewed the game against the Chiefs, I said I thought the Cardinals were fraudulent, and I believe that's still the case. I think this is not going to be a good year for them. I think this is going to be a regression year for them, and I think this is going to be a hot seat year for Cliff Kingsbury, extension or not. So I think that there is pressure long-term for the Arizona Cardinals, but in the short-term intermediate schedule, I would say that the Raiders probably need this one more just to get some win equity when it comes to playoff time, and they need to get into those wild card talking decisions. I also do want to say one big takeaway. Davante Adams still really good at football. So that is one thing that was a big takeaway from week 1. Not Aaron Rodgers dependent. Davante Adams still really good at football. As Kyle mentioned, I foresee him having a field day against the Arizona Cardinals secondary. I think Renfro is going to get more involved. I think Waller is going to get more involved. I think that Derek Carr is going to have a bounce back day. At home, there's going to be a lot of energy in that Vegas stadium. So I expect this to be a win for the Raiders. I am going to stick with Vegas on this one and pick Las Vegas. All right, Kyle.
Las Vegas wins and does not cover.
Okay, Blake, you're next.
I'm going to go Vegas as well. I just did not see enough from Arizona last week to suggest they could win this game. I just don't see it.
All right, there you have it. Raiders across the board. Go Raider Nation. All right, guys, we have another guest joining us this week. Blake Jude. Blake has been on the podcast before. Blake, go ahead and tell the people where they can find you on social media.
I'm everywhere on social media. If you're interested in my Bengals content, which is what I do a lot, got my logo on my own t-shirt here. Follow me on Instagram at StripeHypeCincy, where I post all Bengals content on. But if you want more variety, my Twitter at BlakeJude714. I do pretty much every football there. I'm going to be doing a lot of betting stuff this season in football. I'm going to be keeping up with college football, NFL, all of that. So make sure you follow me on my Twitter for all of that content.
Check out Blake for all Bengals content, all sporting content, great draft analyst as well. Follow us on social media at Slumpbuster Podcast. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and comment about whatever we were talking about in this video. I don't know what it is. This is just going to be a general outro tag. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. Juju Talk Sports. Kyle Ledbetter here. We'll see you next time.